I invite you to take a journey with me into Abode's backyard in San Antonio, Texas. The first thing you may sense is a gentle breeze against your skin. The wind ruffles the leaves of the live oak trees that provide much needed shade in the hot summer months. You hear the soft music of the wind chimes. Winding trails allow you to meander, cardinals and wrens joining you. At the heart of it all is a labyrinth, a tool for walking meditation that invites you to slow down, quiet your mind, and connect with the present moment. Many find that walking the labyrinth, this space of sacred geometry, can promote mindfulness, reduce stress, and encourage a sense of calm and balance, leading to release, renewal, and a deeper spiritual connection. It's a journey inward to the center of the labyrinth, and then back out. Different from a maze, no wrong turns, offering a unique path for personal reflection and self-discovery, regardless of your religious or spiritual beliefs. Don't you want to come visit? Take some time in our contemplative backyard? Our guest today enjoys spending a great deal of time in Abode's backyard. Leah Gundrum is a landscape designer, a death doula, and an Abode volunteer. Leah's passion lies in studying and designing cemeteries and other outdoor areas that encourage contemplation. Stay with us as we delve into the power of these profound designs and learn a little bit more about Leah and her philosophy on life and death. Welcome to Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, our mission is that we live in a world where death is not feared, and we live fully until we die. And we'd like to make that happen before we go. I'm Natalie Buster at Abode in San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to Before You Go. Leah, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Oh, good. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on.
I know I have loved the first two, so I'm thrilled to be on the third.
Oh my goodness. So we were joking before we started recording that you and I could talk about death for hours and hours. And I think we've done so at
Yeah,
Abode.
at least.
Yeah, so, I kind of described some of the work that you do as a landscape designer, as a death doula. You're also a tango dancer. What do you want our listeners and our viewers to know, first and foremost, about you and your work?
I think, yeah, like you, I'm someone that wears a lot of hats, but my day job is a landscape designer, and then I'm an end of life doula at Abode and outside of Abode as well. And I think what I would love for people to know is that because I'm both a landscape designer and a death doula, I just have a particular interest in sacred space. So, how the spaces that we inhabit physically in the tangible world, but also our internal landscapes, how that impacts and shapes our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I do that. My day job as a landscape designer is I work in the built environment in San Antonio on a lot of civic projects. So I get to really have a say in how our city's built. And then the internal landscapes that I get to work with at Abode are entirely different, but still just as fun.
Mm. So, Leah, I loved what you said about internal landscape. And I wonder if you can define what that means to you in all of the work that you do.
Yes. So when I'm building in internal landscape or when I'm building sacred space for myself or for anyone else, it's essentially when you're doing deep work, whether it's reflecting or creating or healing or supporting others, you need to find a way to cut through that noise. So sacred space can create a sense of safety and focus, and it can help keep out distractions. But it's simply creating a setting physically and mentally that is intentionally set apart for these specific purposes, which is a vague way of saying things, but it can look different depending on who I'm working with or whether I'm working with myself, but it's a way of creating a boundary so that you can focus, so that you can feel safe, and
Mhm.
so that you can work without distraction or interference.
I love that description because it's something that we really teach in our doula training, and really everyone who walks through our door, either as a volunteer or a staff member, is how to create a sacred space for yourself with those boundaries. Sometimes I refer to them as bookends, so that you can be fully present for the care and the service that you're giving others. And I'm curious because it seems obvious that then that translates from that internal work to an external space that you're also passionate about.
Right. So, I mean, that's why I fell in love with Abode when I first started coming and volunteering and doing work there. Is so it's designed as a home, and there's 3 rooms where our guests can come and stay in. But those rooms all have doors that open up into this beautiful backyard landscape. And they're big enough so that the beds can wheel outside when it's not too hot. We're in San
Yeah.
Antonio, so it's usually hot in the summer, but when it's not too hot, the beds can wheel outside. So even if our guests aren't mobile, they can be outside, they can be in nature. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but it feels like every time I'm there, there's a guest that's naming the birds, that's
Oh,
talking about the
yeah.
butterflies they see outside, that has some sort of connection to the landscape out there. One, because it's so beautiful, but two, because it creates life and it creates movement and it creates space that they feel really safe and good in.
Mhm.
And we know through the medicalization of death and dying of how important space is and how it can really make or break an experience. And so, one of the really incredible things about Abode is that it has nature right outside your door where
Mhm.
you can be fully embedded in it if you want. And the example that I always give is I was at Countryside Memorial. I was helping Sunny with a burial at one point, and there was a family there, so there were kids, there were adults. It was the whole range, and one of the adults was speaking, and they were giving a pretty heavy speech, so the energy went way down,
Mhm.
and the kids in those moments look to the adults to know
Yeah.
what to do. And so the adults were all in tears, really somber. It was a tough moment, and the kids just broke down in tears. But at that same time, because Countryside Memorial, which you've talked to Sunny before, is a natural burial park, the wildflowers were blooming. It was in April. It was just so vibrant and full of life. And in that moment, these butterflies flew across and landed on one of the child's shoes.
Oh.
And everybody kind of directed the focus to that, of how, that amazement of that moment. And it took everybody out of their heads and out of their thoughts and stories around what was going on, and it just brought them back to something that brought a little bit of joy, and it really rounded out this kind of heavier moment with a reminder that we're a part of something bigger.
Oh, what a beautiful picture that you've just painted. We love Sunny Markham, and she appeared on our last season of the podcast.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
She's wonderful. And you bring up some wonderful points. You mentioned the medicalization of death and how our country has kind of moved in that direction. And yet, with you, there's a clear movement against that and really trying to return to nature, to our own internal landscape, that part of us that already knows how to serve people at the end of life, and the part of us that knows how to die and how to return to nature. Now, you just came back from a whole bunch of traveling this summer, and I'm curious if you saw a difference in how death is celebrated, acknowledged, what the death industry is like overseas as compared to America.
Yeah. Well, I mean, overseas and here, I started in the Northeast and
Mhm.
I was studying green burial for
Mhm.
the landscape firm that I work for. And I went to a few different places, some kind of mom and pop green burial sites, as well as some more institutionalized ones. And the ones that were by far the most successful were the ones that activated their spaces with life as well. So
Mhm.
the ones that didn't relegate death to being this separate thing, but that incorporated into the landscape, into the environment, ways to bring the community in for all aspects of life.
Yeah.
So I was in Pittsburgh and I went to Penn Forest Natural Burial
Mhm.
Park, and they've designed their whole space to where they have a cut flower garden that people can come and volunteer at, and they use all of the flowers in ceremony. But they also have greenhouses that can be rented out, and then they do farm to table dinners at the burial park. They have goats where they do goat yoga. So the community is regularly participating in activities at this burial park, and because of that, they have a relationship with it. So that it's not an unfamiliar thing. It's a place where they really want to be already. And then when I was in Sweden, similar, that death is just a natural part of their landscape there. Their cemeteries are really embedded in their cities and they're used as parks. And so everybody just spends time there already, and they dedicate money and time and investment into those spaces to make them really beautiful so that people want to be there. And it really shifts the entire cultural perspective around those spaces and therefore around death itself.
I think that's so beautiful. And I know that's what we're really trying to do at Abode too, with the backyard and the sacred geometry of the labyrinth. And like you mentioned, the guest rooms that just open up to nature and to that green space. I'm curious, were you able to see or were you able to pick up a different opinion about death and dying when these spaces existed, where these spaces existed?
Yes, but it's hard to say because it's like when I'm talking to you, we geek out on this kind of stuff. So I found that I was constantly surrounded by people that also are very comfortable with their mortality, are very comfortable with talking about these topics. So it was so easy to have all of these conversations. But definitely when I was in Stockholm, when I went there, even without telling people why I was there, I would meet them and they would be like, "Oh, you have to go to the Woodland Cemetery. It's amazing. You have to go to this cemetery. You have to go to that one." And so the conversations around death were just a lot more prevalent in general because of the nature of the work. But generally speaking, when I tell people that I'm a death doula, even when they're not involved in the death care world, you kind of see them light up with curiosity a little bit, because I do feel like there's such a desire out there for a different way. And people want to understand their mortality and they want to understand how to get more comfortable with it. They just don't know how to. So when they hear that you're a death doula or they hear you're an end of life doula or any of those things, they that piques their curiosity is generally what I find.
Yeah, it's this relief of being able to talk about things that they've shoved down inside for so long and be able to confront is maybe not the right word, but maybe befriend their grief and the grieving process and any of their fears that they have around death and dying.
Yeah, just get a little bit more intimate with it, because
Mhm.
I know one of the reasons that I became a death doula was because I had so many questions and I nobody could answer them. And growing up, I went to funerals for my family, but it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I experienced death really in my face in an unexpected way, where I had to start to question things. And nobody had answers except for the one death doula that I happened to run into. And so it was where I started digging. And digging really was what brought me closer to life.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Abode's vision is we live in a world where death is not feared and we live fully until we die. And I think it's
It's
when we can
beautiful.
yeah, when we can facilitate these conversations and make it safe, whether through the internal landscape work, the external landscape work, or just being present for people so that they can have these opportunities to discuss these deep subjects. I think it's such a service that we can provide ourselves and
Totally.
others. Mm-hmm.
Totally. And the contemplative mission about Abode is what I love so much about what we do too. And it's what drew me there because it's been the root of my work for so long is we're not trying to give anybody answers because it's kind of up to them to decide on the own answers that make sense for their life. But we're there to bring the focus in and show that this is a safe space for whatever needs to come up to come up,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going to judge you. We're not going to try to change anything. We're just, we're the physical or energetic hand on your back that is like, I'm right here with you while you're going through it.
That's beautiful. I wonder if you can talk to our listeners and our viewers and describe. I did a little description at the beginning of the episode, but how would you describe Abode's backyard and maybe juxtaposing that with your ideas of that a real sacred external landscape that you are passionate about?
Well, Abode's backyard is magical. So if anybody hasn't seen it, they should go take a visit to it. It's, and I think it was designed by Blue Heron Design, if I'm
Mm,
not wrong. So just to give a shout out to that, because it was before my time at Abode. But when you exit, there's just these incredible live oaks. And for any listeners that aren't in Texas, the live oaks are so iconic. And most of the people that we have that come to Abode are from Texas. And so it's really nice to have that familiarity of a tree that watched over you your whole life while you were here, also kind of being the guardians of this space back here. So there's meandering paths that make their way around that you can walk. And along the way, you'll make your way to a few different stops. And the first one is my favorite. And I think it's totally underutilized, but it's that prayer wall. And it's so simple, but it's so perfect in its nature of how it gives you something to interact with. It gives you something, if you want to light a candle and place it, there's these carved out spaces in it where you can leave offerings or you can leave, a lot of times we're carrying a lot of weight with grief. So it gives you a moment to take a moment and reflect on it and leave it there
mm,
or leave a prayer there, which I think is so, so beautiful. And then you continue to make your way along the path, and it's beautifully gardened because we have so many volunteers that come and help take care of the space too. But you make your way along the path, and there's benches. A lot of them are dedicated by, or were donated by people that are involved with Abode or have been a part of it in some way. But when you make your way around the back is a labyrinth, which was installed by Boy Scouts, I think. And it's such a wonderful place to go and spend the afternoon because, again, it's under the shade of these live oaks. So you're really held in that space and protected. And you can just wander your way in and out there. Like you said at the beginning, it's not a maze, it's a labyrinth. So there are no dead ends, there are no wrong turns, but it brings your focus right into that moment, and you're surrounded by the bird song because we have so many bird feeders to invite all the different kinds of life into the space too. And then as you make your way out of the labyrinth and then back towards Abode, you walk by the rooms that are there that have the doors that open up to the outside. It's such a peaceful space. Really, it's a true example of what end of life care should look like, where it's not a sterile environment. It's not gray walls and windows that don't open. It's like a home that is connected to a landscape that's familiar. And it's our minds really need context when we're dealing with grief and we're dealing with difficult emotions, in the context of nature that we grew up with, that the bird songs that are familiar, the bugs that are familiar, the plants that are familiar, is really important to create a space that we feel safe in.
yeah, when we teach the art of contemplative dying, living and dying, we do look to nature because we can look to the cycles of nature to really educate us about our own cycles in life. And I think having it there for people's final breaths can be incredibly profound. And I
Yeah.
love how you said, we have the guardians of these live oak trees the familiarity of the bird songs. And I feel like there is an energy there, and I know you pick up on it too in the backyard, where
Mhm.
it's the whispers of our ancestors.
Completely. And one thing that I love, because we have guests from all different backgrounds, all different spiritualities, all different religions. And so it's one of my favorite things to get to know who I spend time with and what makes sense for them. But I love to talk about how our first teacher about life and death was nature. And then we started to add our own stories to it, which became folklore and it became mythology, it became religious text. In the Bible, there are so many references to very specific plants. In Norse mythology, they talk about the yew tree, they talk about the ash tree. The Buddha achieved enlightenment not under any tree, but under a Bodhi tree. And that's because all of these stories were specific to bioregions, because the people that were telling these stories learned from what was around them, which was the trees that were around them, the nature that was happening around them. So our greatest teachers, most of the time, are the trees that are in our backyard.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that. I wonder if you can share an example of maybe how the work that you've done, either as a death doula, as a volunteer, an end of life doula, how that is has affected other people. Maybe help them process their own grief, process their own loss.
Yeah. Processing grief is huge because it needs to be witnessed. Grief has to be witnessed. And like I was saying earlier, we're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to offer solutions. We're just allowing it to exist without judgment. And so the work that I do as a death doula is facilitating that space. And sometimes it's just energetically. If I'm working with somebody that's in a hospital bed, or I'm working with somebody where there's a lot of other things going on in the room, they're not at Abode, we might have to make the room really small and just be around them and create a space in that one area. Or if we have all the time in the world and the space in the world, it can be constructing an environment that really, is in harmony with allowing those emotions to flow. But yeah, I mean, the number one thing that we do is it's loving people. It's loving people without judgment and just letting whatever emotions need to come up, come up. And it brings up one time I was working with a woman she was in a lot of pain at the end of her life, and her family was there, and her sister was really upset because witnessing somebody that you love in pain can be really hard. And she turned to me with tears in her eyes, and she was like, she said something along the lines of, does it always have to be so painful? Like this really big question.
Mhm.
Where that's not the moment to ask the big question or to answer the big question, and I don't necessarily have the answer to it. But what I told her was like, I don't know, but it's okay to be heartbroken about it, because it is,
Mhm.
and it's okay to cry about it, and we'll hold each other through it, because that's all
Mhm.
we can really do.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're right, because we're not here to fix. We're not here to solve anything. We're here to
No.
just sit with them. We may
Yeah.
not have the answers, but we can sit with them in the darkness.
Yeah.
Um, what do you wish more people knew about preparing for the end of life? I'm sure you've seen people who are incredibly prepared, people who aren't.
Yeah. Start sooner. Start sooner than you think, and prepare for the end of life when you're not actively dealing with it. Like when you're in a good place, when you're healthy, when you're able to sit and contemplate, what do I want my death to look like? What do I want to happen with my body? Where do I want to die? Think about all of these things while you have the capacity. Because the thing is, insurance will follow you until the day that you die. Taxes will follow you until the day that you die. All of these logistics are going to still exist. So the more that you can deal with your advance directive, your will, all of the paperwork around it as much as you possibly can, the better, so that you can leave as much space for the contemplative presence as possible at the end of the life. I mean, start sooner, if for no other reason than just that, but also because from my own experience, contemplating my mortality has just really deepened my intimacy with life, and it's really made my life so much richer and so much more I mean, it really allows you to understand the true miracle it is that we even exist. It's such a miracle just to be here. And so for that reason too, the sooner the better. There's no need to wait.
Amen to that. My goodness. Yeah. And I love how you put it. Like, do all of that now while you can make the decisions, while you're not dealing with grief or anticipatory grief or pain or suffering. And that way, when you are at that point of life, you can bask in the contemplative nature of the dying process and like confronting our fears now and getting in front of things like paperwork and advanced directives, which can sound daunting and maybe off-putting for a lot of people. Like, we're all going to die. I mean, I think that is something that we know deep down inside of ourselves, but we don't let ourselves think about it
Right.
frequently. So I think confronting our own mortality, getting the hard stuff out of the way now so that when it does become our time, we're able to embrace all that nature can provide.
Totally. And the paperwork, like you said, it can be so daunting.
Hmm.
So have an advanced directive party with your friends.
Yeah,
Like, do it all together
make it
because
fun.
you might not, yeah, you might not do it on your own, but if you have a room full of people that are also doing it, then you're a lot more likely to get it done and it will be a lot more enjoyable.
Oh, I love that idea. So I read something really fascinating about you, Leah, and I have a feeling that this may be how you fill your cup, how you keep yourself going, even when you're working with people at the end of life. I heard that you're a tango dancer.
I am. And you know what's so funny is I'm not the only one at Abode, is what I found out
What?
recently. Yeah. So I'm an Argentine tango dancer, which is very different than ballroom tango. It's an entirely improvisational dance and it's danced socially. And so, talk about contemplative. Like, there's nothing that you have to be more in the moment for, in my mind, than trying to dance the Argentine tango with somebody because you have to be so totally present. And I teach in San Antonio, and that's been a new development. That wasn't something that I ever planned, but totally fills my cup because it's a way to give back to my community in such a fun and beautiful way.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was leading a training the other night, and one of the students, she was new to this kind of work, and she said to me, this sounds like really heavy work. How do you keep yourself balanced? She asked me how I filled my cup, in essence. And mine is theater. It's
Yeah.
almost the yin of the yang, or it's the opposite, where you can kind of get away from being around death and dying and immerse yourself into contemplative arts. Dancing, singing, music, I think are all wonderful conduits for that energy.
Oh, yeah.
Have you always been into the contemplative arts like that, dancing and design?
I Yeah, I've always been an artist. I My whole life I was dabbling in whatever I could get my hands on, and didn't start dancing the tango until I was in my early 20s. But I used to be a yoga teacher. I used to, I've dabbled in so many different things, and always in a way of trying to peel back the layers of myself and connect to the moment more, connect and understand myself and my own life better, and music being involved. The tango honestly is like, it's like doing yoga with music. It's just like hyper present movement, but like you get to move your body to the sounds of some really beautiful orchestras.
Oh my gosh, it sounds like a dream. How has that helped you become a better death doula?
Oh my gosh, if you want to know anything about a person, just dance the tango. Like, you can tell so much about somebody through the way that they communicate through their body. And or not nonverbal communication is something that as doulas we really have to hone in on, because sometimes our guests can't speak or sometimes they're unwilling to speak, and we have to kind of read the room in other ways. And dance the tango and you'll learn a lot about humanity, I tell you that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you probably read people really well. You can pick up on
Yeah.
their energy. If people want to connect with you or learn more about the work that you do, what are some of the best ways for them to find you?
The easiest way is Instagram because it's kind of a collision of all of the things that we've talked about today. And my Instagram is my name. So it's at Leah Gundrum.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes.
Perfect.
The question I ask everybody is, Leah, what do you want to do before you go?
That's such a hard question.
We end with the softballs here.
It's such a hard question. I want to do so many things. In general, I just really want to enjoy as much life to the fullest, do as much as I can. But I do feel like it's really important that at some point I live by the ocean because I lived in the mountains for so long. And now I've lived in Texas for a long time. I've done city life. So I think at some point, maybe not in the near future, but maybe the far future, I need to live by an ocean.
I will join you for that dream. I love the ocean.
Yeah, I
It's
need that
wonderful.
landscape.
Is there anything we didn't get to that you want to make sure our viewers or listeners know about you and the work that you do?
No, I think we've covered a lot of topics.
Yeah. Oh, Leah, you are just fantastic and such a fascinating individual. I love the things that you do and the way that you bring your whole self to every aspect of your life. So, thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me, and I feel the same way about you, so it's lovely to get to chat with you a little bit more.
Let's do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, we believe death is not a medical event, and we are not medical professionals. We're just sharing our opinions, and these opinions shouldn't be taken as medical advice. You can find us online on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This episode was edited by Make Your Day Richer.